Hello everyone, Hua here, welcoming you back to chapter 3 of The Emperor's Concubine. I hope that you are enjoying the story. Let's find out what happens today.
This town is quiet when it's late, yeah. This town is quiet when the night is getting close. I'm outside, gonna stay here. I'm outside until you tell me to stop. I'm being so dramatic. I'm always being so dramatic. This town is quiet when it's late, yeah. This town is quiet.
The wind suddenly turned brutal as the sky darkened and Easton arrived at the archery fields to find Genevieve riding the horse. He steadied the reins, and the animal came to a stop before her. She smiled at him and swung her legs over the horse, gathering the bow and arrows from the servants. He watched her with curiosity, and his eyes narrowed. "My lady, are you sure you want to try to best me? I am the king's best archer." Smiling, Genevieve replied, "Until I came along." Less talking. She nudged the animal and rode ahead. Smiling, Easton chased after her, and the servants followed. The woods were tall and consumed the light completely from around them. "Stay close, my lady. These woods are not kind," Easton shouted. "I have been in worse," she cried back. She kicked her horse to go faster, and feet was heard running beside them. Both shifted, and a large deer appeared before them. "It's mine!" she cried. "Never!" he shouted back. He plucked an arrow and fired, but to his utter surprise and shock, she swung herself backward on the horse and fired 2 arrows, one after another, in a split second. One arrow knocked his out, and the other jammed right into the throat of the deer. "As I said, mine!" she cried as she happily jumped back to ride the horse. "Good Lord," he said in disbelief. And that was the entire hunt. It concluded of her knocking every single one of his arrows out and taking the prized kill. When they rounded the loop and reached the lands of the archery grounds again, they saw the emperor emerging with the empress beside him on horses. Easton's cheeks burned as the two of them met them halfway. "Easton greets the emperor with longevity," he said in a stale voice. "Easton, why the long face?" Lionel asked. "My emperor!" a servant's voice shouted through the wind as the carriage containing 6 deers arrived with arrows straight through the neck. Lionel's face paled, and he laughed as he turned to Easton. "My, Easton, you have outdone yourself this time." He wanted to run under a rock and hide. "Your Majesty, it is not I who deserves the applaud. All these were shot with your concubine's arrows." Lionel's eyes widened, and he turned his gaze to her. "Concubine Genevieve? You are the artist behind this work." She smiled and bowed her head. "How kind of you to acknowledge my work." "I say, this is the most stunning display of hunt I have ever seen." "Oh, Easton, she has you bested." "Do not remind me, your Majesty." Come, come, do not let it pale your light." He got off his horse and walked to her, helping her down from the horse by lifting her off. "My lady, you are a gem, and have stunned me silent." She smiled and shrugged. "I am a rare gift, your Majesty." The Empress forced a laugh. "I suppose, thanks to you, the palace walls can celebrate with a good amount of jerky for a while." "You're too kind, Empress." Lionel's face darkened. "Easton, take the Empress back. I shall walk with Genevieve." Easton saw the jealousy burning in the Empress's eyes, but he simply nodded and replied, "As you wish, your Majesty." Genevieve took in the cool air as the Emperor removed the cloak from around his shoulders and set it around hers. It had gotten colder than before, and she felt the tears burning in her eyes. "Does it get any colder than this?" she asked. He came to wrap his arms around her. "Just a bit more than this. Are you used to this kind of weather?" Smiling, she replied, "It makes me yearn for river's warmth." "River?" My foster mother, the shaman who raised me. Tell me about her. Shrugging, she whispered, She is my light in the dark. When I am afraid, it is her voice guiding me back to peace. So much I have learned in regards to living came through her. And what if I were to ask to be the light from now on? She turned lightly and stared at him. The Empress holds your heart. He chuckled lightly. My heart is made to choose, and can veer in any direction. Yes, I love Paloma with all of my heart and soul, but time can change even the oldest of souls. Genevieve turned to watch his eyes dance with an emotion she'd never seen before. She looked away and then whispered, And if one day I shall become forgotten in the change of time? Am I to walk the lonely path of the Empress and have her mock me? She lifted her chin up to look at him. Nonsense talk, Genevieve. The world has wonders for us yet. I share many with her, and more with you. Jealousy is not your strong suit. Do not carry it in your eyes. Laughing, Genevieve replied, Jealousy is normal for any person to sport when it comes to matters of the heart. If you are to ask me to remain cut off from emotions, then you must restrain yourself from touching me. You dare to ask me that. Then do not ask me to hold back jealousy when it comes to the heart. I simply cannot do it. And you will find that you will want to vanquish another man who even glances upon this face of mine. That's right. I shall vanquish and bury them where the dust cannot even touch the bones. Then he pulled her closer to him and touched her lips lightly with his. The emotion that burned in her belly electrified, and she gasped lightly as she pushed him away. He caught her wrists and held them together. Why do you fight me? Are you not pleased with me? He whispered softly. She turned away, and then let out a heavy breath. It is not that I am not pleased, Your Majesty. It is that I do not trust who I become in your presence. A smile graced his lips. You are a wicked tease, Genevieve. Come here. He pulled her toward him and locked his lips with hers. When she tried to struggle, he wrapped his arms around her, and again the fire began burning in her belly, and the sound of a drum began to beat in her ears. At first it was soft, and then it became louder as the kiss intensified, and then a woman's whisper came through to her in a soft voice.
Warrior, heed your heart. Your people await your return. The sword destined to be in your hands is waiting for your blood to seal the blade.
Genevieve gasped and pushed him away. Apologies. I must go. She started running toward the palace halls as he shouted her name. The sky thundered and rain began falling, hitting her, and she began to shiver.
Warrior,
Came the voice again.
your fear will not stop time from turning. Face your destiny.
She screamed and fell to her knees, where she saw an image of herself on a horse, wearing a red armor with a sword in her hand, bloody from war, and River standing beside her, chanting with blood running from her eyes. No! She screamed.
This town is quiet when it's late here. This town is quiet when the night is getting close. I'm outside, gonna stay here. I'm outside until you tell me to stop. I'm being so dramatic. I'm always being so dramatic. This town is quiet when it's late here. This town is quiet.
It's been 3 days, Lionel said as he watched a pale-faced Genevieve lying on the bed. What is wrong with her? The medical doctor looked bleak as he twirled his fingers around. Your Majesty, I am not entirely sure what is causing her to not wake up. Her pulse shows no signs of anything I can detect. Idiot. Get out of here. She nodded and left as Lionel came to sit down beside her. He touched her hand and took a deep breath. 3 days since she fell in the middle of the field from the rain and hadn't woken up since. He'd sent a messenger to get her foster mother, but he had lost hope in figuring out what was wrong. The door opened and Paloma entered with a cup of tea. She looked almost sickly like herself, but he knew it was sick with jealousy. He hadn't been to her side since Genevieve took ill, and although Paloma tried to keep calm, he knew she was on fire within. Your Majesty, I've brought you a cup of tea. Perhaps it might warm you, she said as she handed it to him. He took it and held it, but didn't drink. Then he looked up at her and let out a deep breath. My Empress, do not be upset with me. I have not forgotten my words to you. Even if it was you in her place, I would be here to watch you as well. She lowered her face and shrugged lightly. A kiss of yours always wakes me in the morning, and now I've had to learn to be without it. The absence of it has my heart wondering if I'm worthy enough. He set the cup down and got up, taking her hands. Of course you are, but what would you have me do? There are servants to keep you notified of her status. The state affairs come first. Is that not what you have always said? That I must share you with political meetings, but yet here you are with her every single second, neglecting the chair of an emperor. He bit down anger and took a deep breath. Have I ever treated you differently when you fell ill? She didn't answer. Exactly, my Empress. The silence speaks so much more than words itself. This jealousy of yours is beginning to sound chaotic to our union as husband and wife. Tune it out, Empress. You should be the example. She laughed. The example of not having a heart when another captivates my husband? Am I to be dead in the heart and pretend it doesn't hurt? I never said that. But at least be a lady of elegance. Since when have your eyes become so clouded? Since yours no longer see me and are filled only with her. I told you the Empress has your heart. Both turned to find Genevieve sitting up and staring at them. He was so engrossed in his conversation, he didn't even see she had woken. He walked to her and reached out a hand to her, but she pulled back. How are you feeling? You gave me quite a scare there. Concubine Genevieve, may I ask you to treat my husband better than pulling away as if he is a snake? He has been deprived of sleep for these past few days while caring for you, lacking food and water. The kind thing for you to do is to thank him. Genevieve's eyes filled with tears suddenly, and she looked up at her. And you must hate me an ocean wide, Empress. Paloma stepped forward. I have contained my emotions for the sake of my husband. Laughing, Genevieve replied, Your words just now speak the truth. You need not lie to me about your heart and who sits in it. Stop, Lionel said. Enough. Empress, leave. Paloma shook her head and whispered, No, Your Majesty. You cannot ask that of me. I am your wife. Leave, he shouted. The door opened suddenly, and River entered, her white hair pulled back into a bun, her cheeks red from the wind. He heard the cry that echoed from Genevieve's lips as the older woman ran to her and gathered her up into her arms. Paloma smiled and took his hand. Perhaps it is time you and I have a little talk of heart now that she is here. Paloma felt her heart thumping as she entered her chamber with her husband following behind her. As soon as the door was closed, she turned around and slapped him across the face. The action made his eyes widen, and he reached up to touch his cheek. Empress, what is the meaning of this? He asked. You must ask that of me? After 3 days of non-stop silly worrying about a woman who is clearly using you to gain attention, you have the right to ask me that. Have you gone mad, Emperor? Where is your head? She is using your emotions like a puppet. He hardened his jaw and walked to the window where he turned his back to her. In all of our years as husband and wife, this is the most insulting you have treated me. Just how do you expect me to forgive you for your offenses? She walked to him and turned him around, shaking her head in disbelief. And in all of our years of marriage, this is the most hateful behavior of yours I have seen. A little girl parades in and you are blinded. Where am I in all of this mess? Right beside me, where you should be, Paloma. Have I discarded you? Have I sent you away? It certainly feels that way. she whispered. All these nights I've spent it alone and wondering if I am enough to fill your heart's desires anymore. The state is waiting for you to return, and all you can do is think about her. What exactly has she bewitched you with? I haven't bed her at all, if that's what you are trying to get an answer out of. Paloma stepped back, shocked at his response. She gazed into his eyes and realized the cold, hard truth. She's still untouched. Yes, she is as the day she arrived here from the bridal envoy. Shaking her head, she asked, Is that why you've lost your head? Because you cannot have her? Of course not. A woman is by all a place of pleasure, and if I were to seek just pleasure, I could take any palace maid. But I value myself more than you think, Empress. I have never forced a hand on anyone, and if she is not willing, she will remain the way she is. Have you thought about what the Hayam Hulan tribe would do to me if they were to hear that their daughter was mistreated by me, by you, of all people? Do you think they would not come marching into our palace halls and demand an answer? What then shall I do with my political and state affairs? Explain that my wife, the Empress Mother Nation, is overwhelmed with jealousy, so I must not seek bed with my concubine? Paloma lowered her eyes and turned away. You are twisting the story to make me a villain, Your Majesty. I merely want justice. For what? Have I not been more than fair? Have I treated you poorly in any way? What's more, have I exiled you and kept her in your place? Paloma remained silent, and he continued. You do not understand how hard my situation is, my lady. I am not capable to win everyone's heart, but the heart that should never doubt me is yours. She sobbed and threw her arms around him, holding him tightly. Her tears rolled down her cheeks, staining his tunic as she took several long, deep breaths. Jealousy is an enemy I despise so much, Your Majesty. I do not want it to be near me. He pulled away and touched her cheeks. Do not let it consume you. If anything, you should be the most clear-headed of all people here in my palace halls. When I am exhausted, in need of place of comfort, it is always your arms that I find that in. Nodding, she replied, Forgive me, Your Majesty. I lost myself for a bit there, but I promise that from now on I shall refrain from letting that consume me ever again. Genevieve felt her throat harden at the look on River's face as the older woman handed her a cup of steamy tea. She took it and held it, but River automatically brought it to her lips and forced her to drink it in one sip. The warm liquid entered her throat all the way down to her belly, and she felt the heat begin to spread throughout. What did you see? River asked. Why do I have a feeling you already know? Smiling, River replied, Of course I know. What I want to hear is your feelings. She took a deep breath and set the empty cup down. What difference does it make? I am confused with my visions, and I do not understand it a single bit. They keep calling me warrior. Am I one? Has he begged you? River asked suddenly. Her cheeks flushed, and she forced a laugh. Are you seriously asking me this question? Has he begged you? She asked again, sternly this time. She lowered her face and shook her head. River came to tilt her chin up to look at her. Until he has begged you, you will never see what you are truly capable of. Rid of your maidenhood, and you will be given the gift you were born with. Stop with your riddles, River. It is not helping me. There are no riddles here, Genevieve. I said simply, rid of your maidenhood. With it attached, your eyes are closed. Once you rid of your most intimate part, the flood will be released. Only then can your destiny be revealed. Genevieve rolled her eyes and pushed the blanket off, standing. Ugh, enough with this talk of destiny, River. I just want this to go away so I can be normal. Smiling, River replied, Normal doesn't exist, my dear. It is only for the dead and the deaf. You are neither, and you must adhere to your mission. Let go of your maidenhood, and what you seek shall be given to you. And what is that? River smiled and replied, Answers. Thank you for tuning in. Chapter 4 will be released shortly.
This town is quiet when it's late here. This town is quiet when the night is getting close. I'm outside, gonna stay here. I'm outside until you tell me to stop. I'm being so dramatic. I'm always being so dramatic.